Listen closely, my friends. There are individuals who walk right through the center of chaos, yet somehow, absolutely nothing sticks to them. They encounter disrespect, but they refuse to react. They face immense pressure, but they never break. They lose external things, but they never lose their grip on who they are. If you observe them closely, you begin to realize a strange truth. It is not that their lives are somehow easier than yours. It is that they have trained their minds in a way most people never will. Right now, you probably think your greatest obstacles are stress, overthinking, and volatile emotions. But what if the actual problem is simply that your mind is completely untrained? Because it is untrained, any person, any comment, or any random situation can instantly dictate your state of mind. Think about how fragile that makes you. One text message can ruin your entire morning. One minor insult can shatter your self-confidence. One bad day can completely derail your momentum. That means you are not the one in control. In a world where people are so easily triggered, easily distracted, and easily manipulated, the individual who masters their own mind masters absolutely everything. In this video, we are diving into 10 brutal, powerful lessons that will make you mentally unshakable, calm under intense pressure, and emotionally untouchable. This is not surface-level self-help. These are deep, practical, philosophical principles rooted in ancient wisdom from thinkers like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus. But be warned, these truths are not comforting. They will challenge your habits, expose your weaknesses, and force you to look at the parts of yourself you constantly avoid. Most people watching this will quit halfway through, but if you have the discipline to stay until the very end, you won't just walk away feeling temporarily motivated. You will actually begin to think differently. Let us begin. Lesson 1. Master the space between stimulus and response. There is a moment so incredibly brief and invisible that the vast majority of human beings live their entire lives without ever noticing it. It is the tiny gap between what happens to you and how you choose to react. When someone insults you, that moment exists. When a plan falls apart, that moment exists. Even when you feel a sudden surge of anger, fear, or frustration, that precise moment is there. Within that split second, your entire path is decided. The tragedy is that most people completely bypass it. They skip the pause entirely and jump straight into a blind reaction. The moment they feel disrespected, they fire back defensively. The moment things go wrong, they panic. The moment anger hits, they explode. Just like that, they surrender their power. The ancient philosophers taught us that it is never the external event that harms us, but rather our response to it. But people misunderstand this. They think it just means putting on a fake smile or forcing yourself to look calm. The truth runs much deeper. Your ultimate power lives inside the pause. That small gap between the trigger and your reaction is exactly where your freedom resides. Think about a massive mountain. Storms crash into it, violent winds whip against its face, and heavy rains try to erode its foundation. Yet the mountain never reacts. It does not panic, it does not shift, and it does not fight back because it doesn't need to. It is fundamentally grounded. Now contrast that with a dry leaf on the ground. The slightest breeze blows, and the leaf flies away helplessly, devoid of control, direction, or stability. Most people spend their entire lives living like that helpless leaf. Mentally strong individuals choose to become the mountain. Look back at your own life. How many times have you said words you immediately regretted, allowed your emotions to dictate your actions, or let a completely irrelevant person ruin your mood? That is not an unchangeable personality trait. It is simply a total lack of awareness. If you were truly conscious of that tiny gap, you would choose a completely different path. The very next time something triggers your emotions, force yourself to halt. Do not say a word or take an action for just 3 to 5 seconds. Allow yourself to feel the raw emotion, but refuse to execute it. Observe the feeling as if you were a complete outsider looking in, and ask yourself one simple question. Do I want to react blindly, or do I want to respond with intent? That single shift in focus alters everything. You possess absolute power over your own mind, not over external events. The moment you realize this, you find your true strength. But that strength only exists if you actually claim it. If you refuse to govern your own reactions, the rest of the world will gladly do it for you. Consider the deep ocean. On the very surface, the waves are chaotic, loud, and violent. But if you drop down deep into the depths, everything is silent, perfectly still, and entirely untouched by the storm above. Your mind possesses these exact same levels. Most people live their lives entirely on the chaotic surface, which is precisely why every minor inconvenience disturbs them. But when you train yourself to embrace the pause, you drop into the deep, still waters where nothing can shake you. The moment you stop reacting instantaneously, you cease to be predictable. You can no longer be manipulated, and you stop being weak in high-stakes situations. Slowly, you transform into someone who cannot be easily read, someone who thrives under pressure, and someone who acts out of conscious choice rather than raw impulse. That is genuine power. If you are ready to claim that power and break free from the noise, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. Welcome to Silent Authority. Lesson 2. Completely detach your ego from external events. Let me reveal a truth that most people spend their entire lives running away from. You are never actually hurt by what happens to you. You are hurt exclusively by the story you tell yourself about what happened. Let that sink in, because understanding this single concept will instantly eliminate 80% of your emotional suffering. An event occurs. Someone ignores your call. You fail an exam or a business venture. Someone treats you with disrespect. Instantly, your mind goes to work spinning a narrative. They don't respect me. I am a failure. I will never be good enough. Something is deeply wrong with me. But the reality is that the event itself was completely neutral. The agonizing pain you feel comes entirely from your own personal interpretation. This is exactly where the vast majority of people completely lose their grip on reality. They are utterly incapable of separating raw facts from their own fragile egos. They take every single occurrence as a personal attack, making everything entirely about themselves. When your ego is tightly bound to every external event, you leave yourself completely exposed to being hurt by anything and everything. Imagine a clear mirror resting in the middle of a dense forest. Whatever walks in front of it, the mirror simply reflects. If a dangerous lion passes by, it reflects the lion. If a massive storm rolls through, it reflects the storm. If a rotting tree crashes down, it reflects the destruction. Yet through all of this, the mirror itself remains entirely unblemished. It does not become the storm, and it does not absorb the destruction. It merely reflects reality exactly as it is. That is precisely how a trained mind ought to operate. Instead, most people operate like a pool of muddy water. The absolute smallest pebble drops into them, and their entire clarity vanishes in an instant. Let's look at a modern example. Someone doesn't reply to your text message. The objective reality is simply that they have not sent a response. That is the entire factual truth. But your ego-driven mind immediately creates a dramatic script. They are actively ignoring me. They don't value our relationship. I must have screwed up. Suddenly, your mood plummets, your creative energy drains away, and you fall into a destructive spiral of overthinking, all because of a fictional story you invented, not because of reality. Moving forward, you must build the habit of separating two distinct things: what actually happened versus what you are telling yourself about it. Train your mind to step back and state, "This is the objective event, and anything else is just my mind's interpretation." This single mental habit completely shatters emotional illusions. The greatest leaders in history practiced this exact discipline daily. They would strip events entirely down to their bare, raw forms. Instead of crying out, "This is an absolute catastrophe," they would objectively state, "This is simply an event that has occurred." When you deliberately strip away emotional labels, you completely eliminate unnecessary suffering. Think about the sky above you. Heavy clouds roll in and roll out. Violent storms light up the dark, and torrential rain pours down. Yet through it all, the fundamental sky remains completely unaltered. Your passing thoughts, your intense emotions, and your temporary situations are nothing more than those passing clouds. Your core awareness is the infinite sky. The exact moment you stop identifying with the temporary clouds and start identifying with the permanent sky, you become truly untouchable. When you finally detach your ego, a profound transformation occurs. You stop taking things personally, you stop bleeding emotionally over minor offenses, and people lose all leverage over you because they can no longer control how you interpret reality. The moment you stop making everything about yourself, you break the chains of self-inflicted pain. Lesson 3. Guard your personal energy as if your life depends on it. Let's be brutally honest with ourselves. Your absolute biggest problem is not a lack of time. It is a catastrophic leak of your personal energy. You wake up in the morning feeling driven and motivated, but by the time evening rolls around, you find yourself completely drained, highly irritable, and mentally spent. You convince yourself that you just need more sleep, but physical exhaustion isn't the root issue. The truth is that you are actively bleeding mental energy all day long through tiny wounds you aren't even paying attention to. It is rarely the massive life crises that destroy a person's peace. It is the constant, compounding microdrains. Participating in pointless arguments, absorbing the complaints of negative people, overthinking past interactions, mindlessly scrolling through social media, and reacting defensively to every single piece of noise around you. Every single time you choose to engage with something entirely unnecessary, you willingly hand over a piece of your cognitive power. Your mind becomes deeply stained by the exact color of the thoughts you entertain. Whatever you consistently expose your intellect to is precisely what you will become. If you willingly surround yourself with chaotic environments, your internal state will become chaotic. If you constantly feed on negativity, you will inevitably manifest a negative life. If you refuse to consciously control your immediate environment, your environment will ruthlessly control you. Picture a pristine, crystal clear river flowing through a vibrant forest. Now imagine a pipe slowly dumping toxic waste into that river, not all at once, but in tiny, consistent drops. Initially, the river looks completely unchanged, but as time crawls on, the water becomes thoroughly polluted, the life within it begins to wither, and the current becomes heavy, sluggish, and dirty. That is the exact state of your mind right now. Every single toxic interaction and every useless distraction you allow into your day is a drop of pollution. If you fail to aggressively protect your mind, you will gradually lose all mental clarity. You spend 15 minutes talking to a colleague who does nothing but complain, and you walk away feeling heavy. You scroll through your phone for half an hour, and your ability to focus deeply is completely shattered for the next 3 hours. You get into a petty argument over something irrelevant, and your entire day feels ruined. These are not random coincidences. This is the direct result of severe energy depletion. You must start asking yourself one critical question before you do anything. Is this specific thing actually worth my limited life energy? Before you type out that defensive reply, before you engage in that gossip, and before you react to that minor inconvenience, pause and evaluate the cost. Not everything deserves a piece of you. Your focused attention is the single most valuable resource you possess. You ultimately become whatever you give your attention to. If you waste your attention on nonsense, you naturally become an extension of that nonsense. But if you guard your attention fiercely, you build a fortress of mental strength. You cannot build an exceptional mind if you are constantly feeding it garbage. You cannot maintain an inner calm if you keep flooding your brain with digital chaos. You cannot achieve massive growth if you allow your energy to be siphoned away every single day. Strictly limit pointless conversations. Intentionally distance yourself from chronically negative individuals. Drastically cut down on mindless consumption. Stop treating every piece of noise as an emergency. Spend real time in absolute silence. These are not just casual habits. These are essential energy shields. The moment you start protecting your energy, you stop feeling like a victim of exhaustion and you start operating with genuine authority. Lesson 4. Kill your expectations before they destroy your peace. Let me ask you a direct question. Why do you actually get frustrated? Why do you experience deep disappointment, bitter anger, or constant irritation? It is not because life is inherently too difficult. It is because reality failed to match the exact script you wrote for it. The hidden underlying cause of almost all human psychological suffering is expectation. You expect people to treat you with absolute respect. You expect your daily plans to go perfectly smoothly. You expect immediate, massive results for your hard work. You expect the world to be fundamentally fair. When objective reality inevitably clashes with those rigid expectations, you suffer. The pain doesn't come from reality itself. It comes entirely from the painful gap between what actually is and what you desperately wanted it to be. That gap is the exact birthplace of all human frustration. The wisest individuals in history understood this trap deeply. They trained their minds every single morning to consciously expect difficult people, unfair circumstances, and sudden setbacks. They didn't do this out of a dark sense of pessimism. They did it out of absolute strategic preparation. Imagine a powerful river flowing down a mountain, encountering massive boulders. The river does not stop to complain that the rocks are in its way. It doesn't get angry at the terrain or demand a straight, easy path. It simply adapts instantly. It flows gracefully around the obstacles, over them, and through them, because it has zero rigid expectations of how the mountain should look. It moves in perfect alignment with reality. Humans, on the other hand, demand a perfectly straight, unobstructed highway, and the moment life presents a rock, they completely fall apart. You go out of your way to help someone and immediately expect deep appreciation. When they fail to thank you, you feel betrayed and hurt. But the emotional pain didn't stem from your act of kindness. It stemmed entirely from your hidden contract that demanded validation. You launch a project and expect immediate, smooth success. When obstacles arise, you throw your hands up and label yourself a failure. Again, that is not reality hurting you. That is your own expectation crushing your spirit. Before you step into any venture or interaction, look reality in the eye and tell yourself, things might go completely wrong. People will likely disappoint me. My plans might completely fail. This is not negativity. This is your psychological body armor. When you train yourself to expect less from external conditions, you suddenly gain the capacity to handle vastly more. Stop trying to desperately force reality to conform to your wishes and start fluidly aligning yourself with what actually is. Think about the weather outside. Some days it rains heavily, some days the sun blazes, and some days a storm hits. You would never stand outside screaming at a rain cloud because you don't control the weather. It sounds completely absurd, right? Yet that is exactly what you do with your life every single day. You waste immense emotional energy getting angry at deep structural realities that you never had an ounce of control over. An expectation is a silent, one-sided contract that the universe never actually signed. And every single time you try to enforce that contract, you suffer. Do your absolute best work without demanding immediate applause. Support others without looking for a debt to be repaid. Plan your future meticulously, but build in a massive tolerance for uncertainty. The moment you stop demanding that life be completely perfect, you stop being a victim of reality. Lesson 5. Ruthlessly transmute pain into raw power. Let's look at the facts. You feel sudden bursts of anger. You feel immense frustration. You experience emotional pain. Your immediate primitive instinct is always to escape it. You look for a quick distraction. You try to suppress the feeling deep down, or you pretend it doesn't exist. But here is the massive secret that no one opens up about. Your negative emotions are not the actual problem. Your absolute inability to weaponize those emotions is what is keeping you weak. Anger, deep frustration, and pain are not signs of weakness. They represent massive, concentrated amounts of raw psychological energy. Left completely uncontrolled, that energy will burn your entire life to the ground. But if you learn to control it and channel it, that exact same energy can build an empire. True mental mastery is not about becoming a mindless robot that feels absolutely nothing. It is about learning to feel the full weight of the storm without allowing the storm to dictate your actions. You must learn to experience the pain without allowing it to define your identity. Think about a powerful volcano. Deep beneath the surface, there is intense pressure, extreme heat, and an immense buildup of explosive energy. If that volcano erupts completely unchecked, it brings nothing but absolute destruction to everything in its vicinity. But if you look at that exact same volcanic terrain decades later, you will find some of the most incredibly rich, fertile, and life-giving soil on the face of the earth. New life thrives there because of the intensity of what happened before. That is the exact potential of your internal anger. Left undisciplined, it is pure destruction. Channeled with intent, it becomes raw creation. When someone treats you with blatant disrespect, your old habit is to scream, argue, and completely lose your dignity, only to regret it hours later. Imagine the alternative. You face that exact same disrespect, but you choose to remain completely silent. You take that boiling surge of anger, lock it away inside your discipline vault, and use it to fuel your late-night work, push your physical limits in the gym, or sharpen your focus on your goals. Suddenly, the very person who tried to diminish you has just accidentally handed you the fuel to upgrade your entire life. The next time you are hit with an intense wave of negative emotion, refuse to suppress it and refuse to lashing out. Step back and ask yourself, how can I strategically deploy this energy? Turn your bitter anger into immediate, disciplined action. Turn your deep frustration into absolute laser-like focus. Turn your emotional pain into massive, undeniable progress. The massive obstacles in your path are not actively blocking your journey. Those obstacles are the journey itself. The exact thing that is hurting you right now is the precise anvil meant to hammer you into a weapon. Consider the immense pressure deep within the crust of the earth. Without that relentless, suffocating pressure, a diamond can never be formed. No pressure means no diamond. The exact same law applies to your character. If you spend your entire life avoiding every ounce of discomfort and running away from pain, you will remain fundamentally soft. If you learn to utilize it, you become incredibly dangerous. When you feel rejected, outwork everyone. When you feel hurt, build something permanent. Stop wasting your emotional currency on temporary drama and start investing it into your own growth. If you are finding value in these principles, take a second to hit the like button and drop a comment below with your thoughts. It helps us reach more people who need to build this mindset. Lesson 6. Completely destroy overthinking by anchoring yourself in the present. Let's audit your mind for a moment. How many hours do you waste playing out terrifying scenarios in your head that haven't even happened? Be completely honest with yourself. You invent catastrophic outcomes, you endlessly replay past conversations wishing you had said something different, and you stress about future events that are months away. Slowly but surely, you induce real, crippling anxiety into your body without anything actually happening to you in the physical world. Overthinking is not an indicator of high intelligence. It is a complete lack of control over your own imagination. You are actively fighting brutal wars that aren't even real, and your nervous system is reacting as if you are under actual attack. The damage this inflicts on your life is severe. Your physical health deteriorates from constant stress, your creative output plummets, and your mental clarity completely vanishes, all because of a collection of ghosts living inside your mind. The wisest minds to ever live understood that anxiety never comes from the challenges of the present moment. It comes exclusively from a mind trying to live in a future that does not exist. You must constantly drag yourself back to one singular checkpoint. What is happening right now in this exact second? Not tomorrow morning, not later tonight, but right now. Look at a wild animal in nature, like a deer. The moment a predator appears, the deer experiences an immediate surge of adrenaline and runs for its life. But the exact moment the danger passes, the deer immediately goes right back to calmly grazing on the grass. It doesn't sit behind a bush for 3 hours overthinking. What if that lion comes back? What if I'm not fast enough tomorrow? What if the other deer judge me? It anchors itself back into the present moment, which is exactly why it retains its calm. Human beings do the exact opposite. We can be sitting in a perfectly safe, comfortable room, and yet we will deliberately manufacture an entire crisis out of thin air. You have a crucial meeting or presentation tomorrow. Instead of preparing your material with a calm, analytical mind, you start visualizing failure. What if I completely freeze? What if they think I'm a fraud? What if this ruins my career? By the time you actually step into the room, you are already completely exhausted mentally. You didn't lose because of reality. You lost because your imagination beat you to a pulp before the event even started. From this moment onward, whenever you catch your mind drifting into a spiral of overthinking, interrupt the pattern. Demand an answer to this question. Is this catastrophe actually occurring right this second? If the answer is no, ruthlessly pull your attention back to your immediate physical reality. Focus entirely on your current breath, the weight of your feet on the floor, and the exact task in front of you. Reality lives exclusively in the present moment. Absolutely everything else is just useless mental static. Your anxiety does not stem from your actual life. It stems from your refusal to stay in the room you are currently standing in. Where your attention goes, your entire emotional state will inevitably follow. Your mind operates exactly like a flashlight in a dark cavern. Wherever you choose to point that beam becomes your absolute reality. Point it at your deepest fears, and you will be paralyzed by fear. Point it squarely at the present task, and you will experience total flow and calm. The dark cavern hasn't changed at all. Only your focus has. Lesson 7. Completely kill your desperate need for external approval. Let's look at your daily actions through a lens of brutal honesty. How much of what you do, what you buy, and what you say is actually for your own personal fulfillment? And how much of it is a calculated performance to gain validation from others? Think about it deeply. You post an update online and find yourself opening the app every 5 minutes just to see who liked it. You accomplish something significant, and instead of feeling internal pride, you look around to see who is clapping. You do something good, and the moment it goes unnoticed, your motivation completely evaporates. This pattern reveals a terrifying truth. You have willingly handed the keys to your self-worth over to complete strangers. The exact moment you begin depending on the approval of others, you completely surrender your personal freedom. Because your mood now depends entirely on their opinions, your confidence depends on their praise, and your life decisions depend on their validation. Slowly but surely, you stop being an authentic human being. You transform into a performer, constantly tweaking your personality, editing your thoughts, and watering down your edge just to be liked by a crowd that doesn't even care about you. You were not created to live your life based on what others think of you. Most people are trapped in a state of emotional slavery. If they praise me, I am incredibly valuable. If they criticize me, I am completely worthless. That is an exceptionally fragile way to exist. Look at the sun in the sky. It rises every single morning and pours out its brilliant light. It doesn't halt midday to ask, is everyone down there enjoying my warmth today? Are they validating my light? It doesn't care if clouds temporarily block its view, and it doesn't look for applause. It simply shines because that is its fundamental nature. Now look at a tiny candle sitting in an open field. A minor gust of wind blows, and the flame instantly flickers and dies. That is exactly what happens to a person who builds their life on the need for approval. You perform an exceptional job, but your manager fails to explicitly praise you, and suddenly your drive hits rock bottom. Why? Because you weren't doing the work for the sake of excellence. You were doing it for a pat on the back. Start measuring your days by one singular standard. Did I act in perfect alignment with my own highest values? Not, did people hit the like button? And not, did I receive public praise? If you can look at yourself in the mirror and answer yes to your own standards, that is more than enough. Genuine confidence is forged through self-respect, never through the applause of a crowd. If you genuinely want to grow into an exceptional individual, you must be entirely willing to be misunderstood, mocked, or looked down upon by the average crowd. Trying to impress everyone is the absolute fastest way to ensure you become mediocre. Growth requires you to step into spaces where you aren't comfortable, and a desperate craving for approval will keep you chained to the safe, average masses. A tree in the deep forest doesn't compare its height to the tree next to it, nor does it look for human validation before it grows. It grows relentlessly because that is what it is built to do. If praise has the power to make you feel like a king, then criticism has the power to make you feel like a peasant. Both states mean you are being controlled by forces outside of yourself. Break that cycle. Lesson 8. Develop the rare ability to sit in absolute silence with yourself. Let us confront an uncomfortable truth about modern society. When was the absolute last time you sat completely alone in a room with zero background noise, no phone in your hand, no music playing, and no digital distractions? Just you and your raw thoughts? The vast majority of people in the modern world are completely incapable of doing this for even 10 minutes. The exact millisecond a moment of silence appears in their day, they experience a wave of low-level panic and instinctively reach for their screens. They turn on a video, open a chat, or scroll a feed. The silence itself is not what terrifies them. What terrifies them is what inevitably bubbles up to the surface when the noise stops. The moment you cut off the external distractions, you are forced to look at your raw thoughts, your deepest insecurities, your buried fears, and the unresolved emotional trauma you've been running from your entire life. Instead of standing your ground and facing those internal demons, you choose to numbing your brain with cheap entertainment. But understand this clearly. Whatever you consistently run away from is the exact thing that secretly governs your entire life. Mentally strong individuals do not flee from their own minds. They actively train them. They intentionally spend time in absolute stillness, reflecting on their flaws, observing their mental patterns, and understanding their true motives. They know with absolute certainty that if you cannot successfully govern your own mind when you are completely alone, you stand zero chance of controlling yourself when you step into the chaos of the world. Think about a beautiful, clear lake. If the surface is constantly beaten by external chaos and whipped by storms, the water becomes muddy and turbulent. You can't see an inch below the surface. Everything is blurry, distorted, and unstable. But when the wind dies down and the water becomes perfectly still, the lake transforms into a pristine mirror, reflecting reality with flawless, undistorted precision. That is the exact state of your mind. When you are constantly bombarding your brain with notifications, music, and digital noise, your thoughts are deeply fractured and your emotional state is highly volatile. Only in absolute stillness does true clarity reveal itself. You feel an underlying sense of anxiety or confusion, and your immediate instinct is to drown it out. You pull out your phone and scroll mindlessly for an hour. Temporarily, the distraction works and you feel a slight relief. But because you never actually face the root of that anxiety, it crawls right back into your chest the moment you lock your screen, coming back heavier and stronger than before. Start small. Every single day, commit to sitting in absolute silence for 10 minutes. Leave your phone in a completely different room. Turn off the television. Do not look for a book. Just sit there and observe your own mind. Do not try to aggressively fight your thoughts, and do not judge yourself for what pops up. Simply watch them pass by like clouds moving across a vast sky. The most clear-headed historical figures wrote extensively in private journals every day. They didn't do this for a public audience or for historic fame. They did it to untangle the knots inside their own minds. That is exactly why they remained calm when empires collapsed around them. They knew themselves inside and out. When you know yourself deeply, absolutely nothing the world throws at you can catch you off guard. Lesson 9. Completely stop allowing trivial matters to dictate your emotional state. Let's look at whatever problem is currently consuming your thoughts and causing you stress today. Ask yourself with absolute sincerity, will this specific issue matter even a fraction of an amount in one single year? Think very carefully before you answer. That petty argument you had, that minor mistake you made at work, that momentary embarrassment, or that annoying delay in your schedule, will any of it have any bearing on your life 12 months from now? In 99% of cases, the honest answer is an absolute no. Yet right now, in the heat of the moment, you are treating that minor issue as if it is a catastrophic event that is completely overwhelming your entire life. The core issue here is that your perspective is incredibly small. When you choose to place your focus right next to a problem, that problem appears massive enough to block out your entire view of reality. Just like holding a small coin right against your eyeball blocks out the entire sun. The moment you intentionally take 10 steps back, you realize how microscopic that problem actually is within the grand scheme of things. Masters of the mind practice a technique called mental zooming. They train themselves to mentally lift off the ground, rising high above their immediate situation, viewing their life from the perspective of years, decades, and the infinite stretch of time. Suddenly, the minor crises that felt overwhelming shrink down into total insignificance. Imagine looking at a chaotic city street from the sidewalk. Everything feels incredibly loud, fast, stressful, and chaotic. Now imagine yourself instantly transported up into an airplane, looking down at that exact same city from 10,000 feet in the sky. The massive buildings now look like tiny blocks. The frantic people look like invisible dots, and all the deafening noise completely vanishes into thin air. Absolutely nothing about the city changed. The only thing that altered was your perspective. You make a silly mistake in front of a group of peers, and your primitive brain immediately triggers a wave of intense embarrassment. You go home and replay the moment 50 times, agonizing over it. But if you look at the reality of human nature, those exact people will completely forget about your mistake within a week because they are entirely consumed with overthinking their own lives. In a year, the event is completely erased from history. Why on earth would you hand over your current peace of mind to a ghost that won't even exist in a year? Your mental and emotional energy is strictly finite. If you waste your limited gold coins of attention on petty frustrations, you will have absolutely nothing left to invest into the things that actually matter. Stop treating every minor inconvenience as a life or death emergency. Train your mind to zoom out instantly the moment a frustration arises. This is not about being passive or ignoring real responsibilities. It is about protecting your peace of mind so you can direct your energy where it actually builds your life. Lesson 10. Become the ultimate observer of your mind, not the blind reactor. After absorbing all of these principles, you must now execute the single greatest mental shift that separates the average crowd from the truly elite. You must realize that you are not your thoughts and you are not your emotions. You are the conscious awareness that is observing them occur. Right now, a constant stream of thoughts is firing through your brain, and a volatile mix of emotions is rising and falling inside your chest. Moments of anger, waves of anxiety, flashes of doubt, and surges of excitement. The massive trap that keeps 95% of the population weak is that they completely identify with those passing states. They feel an emotion and immediately declare, "I am angry," "I am anxious," or "I am sad." But that is a profound lie. You are not the anger itself. You are merely the container noticing the presence of anger. The exact second you identify with an emotion, you completely surrender all control over your life. But the split second you choose to simply observe the emotion, you create a powerful psychological distance, and within that distance, you claim complete mastery. Imagine yourself sitting quietly on the side of a highway, watching cars drive past you. Each car represents a specific thought, and each vehicle represents a transient emotion. Some cars are driving incredibly fast, some are loud and obnoxious, and some look dangerous. But because you are sitting safely on the grass, you don't aggressively jump in front of every single car that drives by, nor do you try to hitch a ride on every vehicle. You simply sit back and watch them pass. That is precisely how a highly trained mind treats its own internal dialogue. The average person, however, behaves like someone jumping frantically into the driver's seat of every single chaotic car that appears, getting dragged all over the highway against their will. You feel a sudden spark of anger, and instead of standing on the sidewalk watching it pass, you instantly jump inside it. You become the anger. You scream, you lashing out, and you burn your relationships to the ground. Imagine training yourself to execute the alternative. A wave of anger hits you, you take a deep breath, and you calmly state to yourself, "Anger is currently rising within my body," instead of saying, "I am angry." Notice the massive difference in those two statements. The first one creates space and retains control. The second one is a complete surrender to the emotion. From this day forward, you must build the habit of objectively labeling your internal states the moment they appear. Fear is currently here. Anxiety is attempting to take root. High stress is passing through. This simple shift completely shatters the illusion of emotional control. This timeless truth sits at the absolute core of every major philosophy and psychological framework in human history, from Stoicism to modern cognitive psychology. They all arrive at the exact same conclusion. Raw awareness is the ultimate form of human freedom. When you are fully aware of what is happening inside your mind, you can no longer be controlled by it. Look at the sky one last time. The darkest clouds will eventually clear, The heaviest storms will always run out of rain, and the lightning will cease to strike. Through it all, the background sky remains entirely untouched, perfectly still, and infinitely powerful. Your thoughts are nothing more than those passing clouds, and your emotions are just temporary storms. You are the sky. Stop allowing a passing cloud to convince you that the sky is falling apart. If you continue to merge your identity with every single mood swing and random thought you experience, your life will remain a chaotic, unstable mess. But the moment you anchor yourself as the objective observer, your character becomes completely rock solid. You started this video as someone who blindly reacts to whatever noise the world throws at you. You are now leaving with the exact psychological tools required to dominate your internal landscape. These 10 deep lessons are not casual information meant to be forgotten tomorrow. They represent a total blueprint for personal transformation, but they only work if you have the courage to actively apply them when the next storm hits your life. Knowledge without execution is completely worthless. The choice moving forward is entirely yours. You can willingly slide right back into your old habits of blind reaction, or you can step into absolute self-mastery. Once you see this truth clearly, you can never unsee it. And once you start practicing, there is no going back. You become calmer, stronger, and entirely unshakable. If you want to continue this journey of discipline with us, make sure to check out the links in the description below to join our community and access our exclusive growth resources. Thank you for watching Silent Authority. Stay disciplined, stay aware, remain in absolute control.